Hello, Janice.
Hello, Anthony.
Today we're going to answer the question, what is a probate reserve? Most people don't realize that when you think the estate is over, it's actually not really over. There's still a little bit more.
Yeah.
Even when the vast majority of probate is complete, it's the smart play for the executor to hold a reserve. Okay? So let's talk about what exactly that is and get into the details. So why keep a reserve? Think of it as a rainy day fund. It's an amount of money that the executor holds on to despite distributing everything else, just to pay for any unexpected expenses.
Yeah.
And yes, even after over a year, maybe even more than a year, it's impossible it's nearly impossible to have full and final certainty on what the final bills and what the final issues are. Things pop up, even with experienced executors and attorneys involved. Creditors, taxes, and the accompanying legal and accounting fees from unexpected problems can be a big deal. So if the executor has no money left in the account, or no money left in hand, it's let's give some examples.
Yes.
So we've had a case where in this case, an executor was our client. I was not the executor, and they didn't really listen, and they didn't do the full. They didn't wait for the full tax clearance, which we discussed in a previous episode. So since they didn't wait and they distributed the money to the heirs, they were shocked and horrified to later receive an unexpected tax bill for over $20,000. And it put them in the tough situation of having to basically ask for money back from the heirs or pay it out of pocket. Not great.
Because it has to be paid.
The IRS doesn't say,
we've talked about this at length.
Sent it somewhere else, then you're good. No, that doesn't happen.
Nope. There is no choice. You must pay that bill. Someone must pay that bill.
There's another case where a hospital, I don't remember if it was a hospital or hospice, there was a medical bill where they sued the executor for an unpaid medical bill. And in this particular case, the lawsuit was very frivolous because basically the hospital did not submit did not formalize their claim in time, and basically they were barred by the statute of limitations from being paid. But it doesn't matter. They still filed the lawsuit, and the attorney or the executor has to defend in court. That costs money, hiring an attorney to defend you.
Yep.
And if the executor hadn't had a reserve, that would have come out of pocket.
Yeah.
So these are the reasons why you have to have a reserve. And one last example. This one's an interesting one-ish. Interesting. Yeah. Long after an estate had been closed, not long, but
long enough,
an alleged son emerged and sued, saying, I should have been involved and I should have received a split, a share of the estate.
Yeah.
That one was a little more gray. I mean, what if it was a son? You don't know until you go through the litigation, and you need fees or you need a fund to pay for the legal defense of that situation.
Yeah. Litigation equals expenses.
Yeah. So in all of these situations, if you had one, thank goodness that you held a probate reserve. Again, a rainy day fund for after the estate is substantially otherwise closed.
Yes.
All right, so that covers what is a reserve. Let's talk about how much should be kept in the reserve. And there's really no set number. It's really a balancing act because it has to be an amount that's big enough for the executor to feel comfortable that he or she won't run out of money in one of those unexpected situations.
Right.
And, it can't be an unlimited number, though. It can't be, I need $1 million for forever.
Right.
Because
just in case.
Yeah. Because if it's too big, there's no point. You're not even really closing the estate.
Right.
So there's a balancing act between it has to be big enough to actually accomplish its goal of being a rainy day fund, but it can't be so big that the heirs aren't actually you're not even really closing the estate. And in general, an executor's goal is to get money out of his or her hands as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. You are a conduit. You are not you're not an investment advisor. You don't want to have this money. You want to get rid of it. Whether it's to the IRS, to a creditor, or to the heirs, you're just passing it along.
Right.
All Right. Does that
And I
make
think
sense? That my explanation of the
does.
balance? Yeah.
It does. And I think as a professional executor, what you do is you take a lot of things into account before you come up with this number. It isn't something you pick out of a hat and say, I will keep, $5,000. You look at the totality of all of it, of how much assets and debts and a reasonable number to come up with. It can be tricky, but I think you've done it a couple of times to know the right amount to keep in there.
Definitely as much art as science, when making those figures.
Mm-hmm.
So last question, when do you release that reserve? So let's say it takes a year to close the estate, and then we hold in a couple $1,000 or whatever the number is for a reserve. When does that get released? Ballpark, usually another year, maybe two after we've closed the majority of the estate. And that's, again, there's no hard and fast rule, but that's generally long enough to figure out if any of the other unknowns have shaken out or have. Again, 10 years from now, I could
Sure.
encounter one of these issues from an old estate that I've been part of, and that's why I have attorneys insurance for these kinds of situations. But you still need to have a reserve for those sort of imminent. I think Janice, you're more. Yeah. What's the general statute of limitations? 6 years?
To hold on to it, you mean? Or,
no, just in general, like the default for anything that's not specifically covered. I think it's 6 years. And I think the most common statute of limitations is 3 years. And if the estate already took a year and a half, holding it another year and a half is about 3 years. I mean, these are the kind of things you think about, like,
right.
I should be okay after this amount of time.
Right.
This is my advice, not to the heirs, but to whoever's serving as the executor. This is for your protection.
Yes, exactly. And like I said, with you being a professional executor, you have an idea when looking at the particular estate. I mean, you can't say for certain, but you're going to know, okay, a year and a half is pretty good. Or, this one had a lot of problems. We should probably wait, 2 years. You're going to look at that as a whole just to make sure. Now, I think after that 2 years, when you release it, I mean, it is still going to the heirs. You just have to wait a little while for it. Yeah. So it's not going to be that you're not going to get it. It's just that one portion that you're holding will come a little bit later.
And it's funny, some heirs like it. It's like they get a second inheritance.
Bonus. Yeah. It's like, okay, here's your inheritance. And then you almost, I don't know, forget about it. Yeah. And then 2 years later, it's like, oh, guess what?
Yeah.
Here's some more.
It's like they got an extra tax refund or something. They kind of like it sometimes. Yeah.
Yep. Because the first batch is probably gone. So now it's like the second, So.
Even if it's only a couple $100, a couple $1,000 for whoever's left, but it's still like, oh, nice,
Yeah. I mean, if somebody wrote your check for $50, you still be like, okay, it's, $50. Why not? But it goes back. It's important. So, and I think you could dig into this a little bit more with Anthony's book, How Probate Works, available on Amazon. So if you're not too certain, definitely read up.
Perfect. I think that's it for today. So hopefully this covers anyone who had any questions about what a reserve is, what is this and how long does it take? Otherwise, I think we're good to go. Thank you, Janice, as always. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll talk soon next time. Bye now.
Bye.